This is crazy. I've practically emptied my bookshelf. I did leave 8 books on the shelf. That is because I bought those books before last year, and everything else that is here on this table are the books that I bought within the last year. I've made 3 stacks. The first one over here is out of frame. This is the second stack, and this is the third stack. I think by title it should be clear by now. I did book hauls this year, which is a fancy way of telling I've just bought a lot of books, and I bought them in mainly 3 batches, like that matters. The first batch over here that I did while I was waiting for my visa application, and then I did a second batch over here when I was in my hometown, still waiting for my visa response, and this is the third batch over here that I did last month. The reason why I'm making this video is because a lot of people have been reaching out to me asking for book recommendations, and I just wanted to share the books that I bought recently or the books that I'm planning to read this year, my approach of how I study a book, how I go about doing my things. We'll try to cover all the books today. Hopefully you will be excited to go out and buy some of these this year. So let's begin. I'd like to preface this with a statement that I don't read a lot. I mean, I do read, but the stack over here is just a representation. I might have just read 20% of the books over here. And that is important because an unread library is more valuable than a read library. So let's begin with the first book haul that I did. 2 books are missing from this. Among those 6 books, I finished only 1 book, The Black Swan by Nassim Taleb. It's a game changer. I think this was released in 2007, and this is what put Nassim Taleb on the map. His ideas are very, very superior compared to other general self-help or self-improvement books. This book is on probability and randomness, and Nassim revolves around that topic most of the time. It's a very fascinating idea, yet his writing is very, very dense. So I would not recommend if you are just starting out to read books. I barely scratched the surface on this, and I did lose my bookmark somewhere over here. Otherwise, the books which I have started reading, I put a bookmark. And on this one, Elon Musk by Ashlee Vance, I've read maybe a couple of pages. The most intriguing quote from this book is, "The best minds of my generation are thinking about how to make people click ads. Jeff Hammer Barker, an early Facebook engineer, told me." I'm a software engineer, and this relates to my field a lot. That pretty much sums up what I do on a regular basis, which is not good. I still need to read this book. I'm first trying to understand more of Elon Musk through his podcast appearances on Joe Rogan, Lex Fridman, I guess, and then consume this book. So I put a pause on this. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations. Marcus Aurelius was one of the greatest Roman emperors in his time. He is a Stoic, and I am a fan of Ryan Holiday and his books, and he draws a lot of references to the Stoics. So I wanted to take a jab at this, but I could not. I've read a couple of pages, and I did not continue with this book, but I do plan to read somewhere down the lane. The thing about hopping books is I want the book to draw me, which is what this book has been. I barely read a couple of pages in this book. Doesn't mean this is bad, while I have read this book 3 times already and listened to numerous times on audiobook. The thing about reading books, in my opinion, is you need to find a book that draws you in. You need to find a book that just makes you excited in a way. This was that book that I read within the last year, and this is also the book that I have given out the most to my friends. And if there's one book that I would recommend you right now among these stack of books is this, The Almanack of Naval Ravikant by Jorgenson. This book is on 2 core philosophy or themes, that is building wealth and finding happiness. Naval Ravikant doesn't want to be wealthy and miserable. He wants to be wealthy and happy. I could go on hours talking about this book, and I'll definitely make a summary about this book sometime soon. Hopefully when it's live, it will be somewhere up here. But for now, you don't even have to watch the rest of the video if you are interested in building wealth and being happy. This is the book you should read, and you can forget all of these books over here. The reason why I went on a shopping spree, a book haul this year is because of these books. I bought 6 books, and I really enjoyed majority of them, and I devoured one of them many times over, and I wanted more of that experience. I wanted to buy a few books, and I wanted to just find that book, one of those gems, rare gems that would just consume me. For me, from this stack was The Almanack of Naval Ravikant, and I did encounter a couple of setbacks in life. These books really helped me overcome those things. So after going through this spree of books, I wanted a fresh batch, and this was that fresh batch that I ordered. This was when I was back in my hometown. Let's begin with the book that was the Almanack in this batch. From this stack, if there is another book that I would recommend, is The Psychology of Money by Housel. It might sound I'm a bit money-minded, but because the previous book was on wealth and happiness, this book is on money. But I think the more importantly, this book is on psychology of how we perceive money, how we perceive value, how we perceive wealth, and even the smart people in our society are kind of wrong about our assumptions with money. I thought I know pretty much everything that is out there on money. Like, I'm not a fool. I would not spend my money carelessly or something like that. But then this book changed how we humans build our relation around money and how we perceive it, how we use it, how we spend it, things like that. So this is another book that is highly recommended. Think and Grow Rich. If you can see the bookmark over here, I've read. This book relates to the idea of some sort of manifesting your needs, desires deep down. And I kind of feel like these books, although from a Western writer, inclines toward Eastern philosophies in some way. And this is an interesting book to say the least. Over 15 million copies sold worldwide. I don't want to make statements about this book because I haven't completely read this, but I'm interested in idea of money and being financially stable. So a majority of books I buy are around the topic, and I want to gain perspective of different writers and how they recommend going about growing your riches. How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. This was released in 1936. This has also been sold for over 15 million copies. Something that people do on this platform is try and influence people. And in that pursuit, I wanted to own this. I actually have listened to this already in audiobooks, but I wanted to own a physical copy and go over the book, highlight my takeaways, because one of the big problems when it comes to listening to audiobooks is that you miss your highlights. Like, you might listen to a very crucial point, but you have no way of highlighting it. So every book that I finish on audiobook, I would like to own a copy. So that is what I did in this batch of shopping. I wanted to own a few physical copies of the books that I already listened to. So this was one of them. The Bed of Procustes by Nassim Taleb. This is something similar to Meditations, or so I felt. I haven't begun reading this book. Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. This is a book on sleep science. Now, as someone who used to have a lot of trouble sleeping in a phase where I was like waking up till 3 a.m., 4 a.m. in the morning for no reason, and I had pretty much messed a lot of my sleep, and it had a lot of consequences on my health. I saw Bill Gates recommending this book, so I thought if Bill Gates is recommending a book on sleep science, it must be pretty damn interesting. So I listened to this book first on audio version. It has a lot of great insights. Some of the takeaways were like caffeine and marijuana isn't good for sleep. Even if you alter your sleep by an hour or two, it will have severe consequences to your health in the long term. This book encourages you to take care of your sleep and also highlights the potential downside of your health if you don't do that. It will change the way you think about sleep. This book has 4 chapters and you can read in any way you want depending upon your preferences, and that is what I like about a book is you can simply hop into any chapter that you would like to revise or to revisit, and you can go on. Fooled by Randomness by Nassim Taleb. By this time you should be aware that I am a fan of Nassim Taleb and his writing and his ideas, just because his thinking is at another level. He is admired by Naval Ravikant as well, whom I admire because of his ideas that were on this book, the Almanack. When I find someone I admire admiring another person, I think that makes even more sense, right?
Nassim has written books that I think people will be reading 1,000 years from now. I don't say that lightly. His new book, Skin in the Game, is fantastic. It's part 5 in his Incerto series, which includes Fooled by Randomness, Black Swan, Anti-Fragile, The Bed of Procustes.
That's a very bold statement coming from Naval Ravikant. He recommends everyone to read all books written by Nassim Taleb. So in that pursuit, I bought this book. I've been hopping a lot of chapters. I have 3 bookmarks in this already. This book highlights the fact that our life is more random than we think it is. Okay, first fiction book and in the series. I saw this book everywhere in many people's bookshelf and I wanted to read this as well, but I haven't. I think this was also recommended by Edward Snowden. Please don't quote me on that. I wanted to read more fiction because that is how I got started in reading as a child. So I wanted to rediscover that, but I'm not good at reading fiction these days, so I just wanted to try. So I bought this. I still haven't read this, and there are more fiction books. I will read more fiction this year. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen R. Covey. 25 million copies sold. So I have listened to this book in audio version. I wanted to own a physical copy, hence I bought this. The title pretty much summarizes everything, right? I'm in a phase where I want to be more effective, obviously more productive, and there is Atomic Habits coming down over here. I think books like these will give you a sort of a perspective into how you can be more effective. God, what am I doing? I'm not doing a good job, am I? Majority of the books that you saw there were from Western writers, Western philosophers, and at the same time, being someone from the Eastern side, I wanted to explore more of my own roots or Eastern philosophies, so to speak. So in a dare, I took a big move and bought this. This is something my grandfather would read, but it's not an easy read. It's Shrimad Gita. So I bought a guide to read this book. It's called The Bhagavad Gita for Millennials. There's something intriguing about Eastern philosophies that do not spoon feed you. A quick example would be like, it's just an example. Western philosophies give you to the point solution. 7 habits of highly effective people. Follow these 7 habits and be highly effective. That's the bottom line of this book. It speaks very clearly. It's very sharp, Western philosophies, so to speak. But Eastern philosophies, it's more like put in the effort and do not expect any results. Karma gara, phalkwas nagara. Meaning Eastern philosophies are more, spooky. I may be wrong. But Eastern philosophies have a way to them. Well, there is something about Eastern philosophies, and I haven't done a good job of reading these. So I think I should read these first and tell you more about these later, sometime later this year. I think I will make another video sometime later this year explaining the summaries, the basic summaries of the books that I've read and my suggestions. Swami Vivekanda, this is written in Devanagari. It's in Hindi. So when my dad saw me ordering this pile of books, he brought a book from his room and gave it to me saying, okay, you should read this as well, because he saw a lot of English books. But when he did see that there is a Bhagavad Gita, he was happy, but he still gave away a book that is Swami Bibek. He was a very influential person, and I have read a couple of his biographies in the past, but I think this will also be a great insight to his life. Atomic Habits by James Clear. By this time, I don't think this book needs any introduction. This has been one of the most covered books in terms of habit change. The takeaway from this book is you should not have goals. When it comes to goal setting, there is no difference between a winner and a loser, so to speak. So what is the difference between a winner and a loser, or a person who succeeds in achieving a goal and a person who does not succeed in achieving their goal? Is the systems that they set and the environment that they build around them. I think that was the major takeaway for me from this book. And if you are someone who is struggling with your habits, who is struggling why you cannot develop good habits or cannot get rid of your bad habits, this book will shed a great amount of light into your own psyche, how you build good habits or how you can get rid of your bad habits. Highly recommended. The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson. I used to be an introvert. I'm still an introvert. Whenever I'm around a lot of people, I feel like my energy is drained and I would hesitate to speak my minds out. But things have changed lately because of this book. I did listen to the audio version of this book, and by far the most intriguing audiobook out there is this book. There's a lot of profanity, but it's fun to listen to. And this book really changed my psyche of how I perceived my values. And this book is not about not giving a fuck. It's counterintuitive according to the author, and instead it's about reprioritizing things that really matter to you in your life and just pursuing those things and not giving a fuck about everything else. That is all this book is about. Highly recommended. Skin in the Game by Nassim Taleb, once again. And before buying any book, I do listen to summaries of that book online, and I do watch a lot of videos, summaries before buying a book. And one of the most influencing takeaways for me from the summaries of the book, of this book, is take 2 people, for example, say a pilot and a politician. If a pilot is reckless in his flying, the consequences are very severe. But if a politician is reckless with his work, he can bail out. And that is all the difference that is out there that separates someone who has a skin in the game versus someone who does not have a skin in the game. While that example is a bit of a simplified version of what the author is trying to say, that is a great idea to study. So if you are intrigued by that idea, Skin in the Game is for you. We have Anti-Fragile, Things That Came from Disorder by Nassim Taleb. I have covered this book a bit on my previous videos. I would like to read you a very first paragraph from this book. Wind extinguishes a candle and energizes fire. You want to be the fire and wish for the wind. You would want to be an anti-fragile in this world where there is randomness, where there are black swans affecting your life, impacting your life by a great degree. You'd want to be an anti-fragile. I don't know where I am. His writing is definitely something difficult to plow through, but I think I will somehow manage to read more of his books this year. Influence by Robert Cialdini. I have listened to this book in audio version, and I wanted to own a physical copy and revisit the ideas. As a wannabe YouTuber, I want to really understand how influence works and what are the right and wrong ways of going about it, because that's important. Put it out simply, it's an important thing if you want to be in the game of influencing other people. I have forgotten a lot of things, so I do need to definitely revisit this book. Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow by Daniel Kahneman. He is a winner of the Nobel Prize. I've listened to this book on audiobook. I'm very fascinated by human psychology, consciousness, decision making, and human evolution. in the recent time. I've been watching a lot of videos from World Science Festival as well on YouTube. I want to understand more about the decision-making process that we humans follow. Bottom line, or the takeaway why you should read this book is because according to the author, we have two brains in our head, a fast brain and a slow brain. A fast brain is our reptilian brain that makes reflexive actions and it makes impulse decisions. That is our fast brain. And we have our more cognitive brain, or the frontal cortex, the slow brain that was recently developed in Homo sapiens, and that is more thoughtful, that takes more time to weigh in all the possibilities and tries to really make wise decisions. While both brains have their purpose and they served us well in our evolution, we do want to find a good balance between these two brains. Hence, Thinking Fast and Slow, the title of this book. The Intelligent Investor by Benjamin Graham. Well, the markets are down, so it might be a good time to get into this stock market. This is one of those OG books out there that is recommended every single time people talk about investing. I don't know much about investing and I wanted to get started on that. That's why I bought this book. Basic takeaway for me has been so far from reading this book is buy from the pessimist and sell to the optimist. That is the gist of this book, and I still need to read more on this. Now, the last 3 books from my second book haul is the series of books from Yuval Noah Harari, Sapiens, Homo Deus, and 21 Lessons for 21st Century. I have listened to Sapiens in audiobook. I think I completed it, but as it happens, you tend to forget a lot of things that you listen to in an audiobook. So I wanted to own a physical copy and revisit all the ideas. He gives you a super detailed picture of what happened within the last 100,000 years or so, how we came about to live our life today in this society. He goes into great depth. So that's why I wanted to read more on the same topic. So I want to revisit this book and maybe try to tackle 1 or 2 of his other books in the same time. Well, that wraps up our second book haul that I did while I was in my home. And this is the fresh batch of books that I hauled last month. So first, up top we have some fiction, Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. There's a guy who I follow on Instagram. He is a bit of a prolific reader. Doesn't speak out a lot, but he does share a bit of his wisdom on his Instagram stories. And one day, someone asked him what would be one single book on fiction that he would recommend. And turns out it was this book. As a person, I take recommendations seriously, so I bought this book. I know nothing about this book, who Ayn Rand is. Forgive me if I'm not much into fiction, and that is something that I would like to improve, and I hope to read this year. I know it's a big part, but I think I can do it. I should shoot for the moon and land in the stars, or something like that. The Kite Runner by Khalid Hosseini. Forgive me if I butchered his name. I went to haul some of these books with my sister, and she wanted this, so this was her choice. But since it lives in our bookshelf, I thought I would go over all the books that we have. We have these really beautifully hard-covered books, Don Quixote and Moby Dick. I tried listening to Moby Dick on audiobook. I could not. I mean, both books are one of those books that are highly referenced in a lot of movies and a lot of shows, or at least the ones that I've watched. I do know pretty much the basics of these 2 books. In fact, I even watched the movie that based on Moby Dick. I did not enjoy the movie for some reason, but I hope I will enjoy the book. And when I want to buy out these books, I did not have any plans of buying fiction, but since they were so beautifully made, like just holding one of these books makes you feel so good about reading a book. I just bought these. There will definitely be a separate video on why I buy physical book, because this video won't be able to cover a lot of the tiny details that I wanted to share, but one of those tiny details is it really feels good to hold a physical book, to feel the weight of the heaviness that is out there in the book. And I think I feel proud whenever I finish a big thick book, so that's why I bought these 2. And I do want to revisit fiction more and more. The Art of War, come on, this is one of those books that I am really ashamed to say that I haven't read yet, although I have watched some summaries, but yeah, I still need to read this. And it's one of those best-selling books out there, I guess, and I wanted to read more Eastern philosophies, so I bought this. I still haven't read it though. We got another fiction, Animal Farm by George Orwell. Yeah, I do have 1984. I wanted to finish that, but I could not. But when I saw this very thin book, I thought naively that I would be able to finish this. I started this, but haven't really finished this. I do have bookmarks on all the books that I I've started Richest Man in the Babylon by George S. Clason. I listened to the audio version of this book. The thing about wisdom is it's very simple. Great wisdom is really simple. Please forgive me about the noise that is coming from the outside. I'm trying to shoot this in day because I don't want to be shooting in night when it's silent, but I'm tired and I want to go to bed early. So I did try shooting this the nights earlier, but I failed, and I'm redoing this. So please bear with the noise. Great wisdoms are simple. Eat healthy, exercise, meditate, sleep well, like simple things. But we tend to overlook simple things because we hope that there must be some secret out there that just changes our lives, right? But truth be told, it's not. There are simple things that we need to understand to be wise, I guess. And I think this is one of those books. 5 a.m. Club by Robin Sharma. I have read The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari by Robin Sharma, and briefly Who Will Cry When You Will Die by Robin Sharma. And I did enjoy his writings. It's easier to consume his books, and the ideas are still great. I'm not able to wake up early this week for some reason, but for a couple of weeks I was able to wake up super early and it felt great. During that time, I did wanted to explore like why I was feeling so good when I was waking up early. Hence, I bought this book hoping to find the answers. Millennials Fast Lane by MJ DeMarco. This book was recommended by Jake Tran, Ali Abdal. I still haven't read this. I'm a simple person. If someone I look up to, if someone I admire recommends a book, I go and buy that book and try to read it. The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. I listened to this book in 2019. I listened to this book thoroughly. I really enjoyed this. This was recommended by Casey Neistat. That was one time when I used to watch a lot of Casey Neistat vlogs. This book is really helpful. This changes the way how you perceive obstacles that come in your way, obviously, because it's 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel. I listened to the audio version of this book and I think I finished it within 3 days. I listened to it back to back. It was so good. I made a lot of mistakes in my entrepreneurial journey so far. It felt like this book was targeting me and saying, hey Keshav, you're doing all these mistakes, so you better watch out. And I'm guilty of doing a lot of the biggest mistake as highlighted in this book. That's why I consumed the audiobook in 3 days, and I wanted to own a physical copy and highlight all the things out there. Sorry about that. If you are trying to start a startup or trying to go about running a business and you've been failing, then this book will likely give you insights on why and how your business fails and what you can do about those things. Highly recommended to entrepreneurs and businessmen out there. Originals by Adam Grant. I think this book covers a little bit on creativity as well as entrepreneurship. The subtitle of this book is How Nonconformists Change the World. And I don't know, sometimes I do feel like I do not conform to the ideas laid down by the society. The book starts with a very nice quote that I have found in many other places as well. The reasonable man adapts himself to the world. The unreasonable one persists in trying to adapt the world to himself. Therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable man. George Bernard Shaw. This highlights the fact that going against conformity and taking an untraditional path is something entrepreneurial, and it has higher risk, obviously, but it also yields higher rewards. I might be after that, so I want to explore more ideas in these books. 7 Brief Lessons on Physics by Carlo Rovelli. I actually went to buy this book. Reality is not what it seems by Carlo Rovelli, but next to this book was another thin book. And whenever I say thin book, I'm a simple man, I buy it. Lately, I've been watching, as I said earlier, a lot of World Science Festival videos, which ranges from big topics such as human consciousness to quantum biology to quantum physics to reality to is the world a matrix? A lot of very interesting things, to say the least. And funnily enough, this was recommended to me by a student whom I used to teach. He did recommend me this book in 2018, so I think now is the right time for me to read this book because my interest really aligns with the ideas that is over here in the book. And hopefully once I start, I'll be able to finish this in a go or something like that. The E-Myth Revisited by Michael E. Gerber. This was recommended by Ali Abdal, whom I look up to because he's doing great things lately, and that's why I bought this book. Simple as that. Haven't read it yet. Business Adventures by John Brooks. I think this was one of those books recommended by Bill Gates as well, but I did not buy this book. My sister bought this book. Well, actually, I bought this for her, but it was her choice. But since it's here, I might give it a go. Mindset by Carol S. Dweck. I'm on the 4th chapter of this book. I'm listening to this book on audio version right now whenever I'm going out for my runs or jogs early in the mornings. This book really dissects the concept of growth mindset and fixed mindset. I used to think I am a person with growth mindset because that's superior, right? Turns out I do not fall into the growth mindset yet, because according to the author, a lot of my thinking and a lot of my history, things that I've done in the past, falls into the category fixed mindset. So I hope this book will make me more of a growth mindset person. This has been a great lesson so far. And I'm trying to find a balance between the audiobooks that I listen to and the physical books that I have. And I want to, once I go for a listening session or so, I want to come back and highlight the things, although I haven't been able to do that, but that is definitely my plan. Go out, listen to a book, a chapter or two, and come back and revisit it in a physical book and highlight the best takeaways that is there. Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. Where do I begin? I have listened to, I think, a majority of this book on Audible already, and I wanted to own a physical copy of this. This book really goes into the depths of successes and how people become successful in life, how a lot of factors, a lot of luck, so to speak, plays in factor for a lot of outliers that are out there. For example, he gives an example of hockey players in Canada, where a majority of the hockey players are the people who are born earlier in the year, January, February, March, and there are fewer players who are born in the latter half of the year, because if you are someone who has your birthday in January, you have a lot of physical advantage to a person who is born in December. You have a difference of, say, 10, 11 or 12 months, give or take, and that is enough to make you an outlier in your field. So there are plenty of examples like that in this book. Highly recommended. Tao Te Ching by, Lao Tzu. It's a Chinese philosophy book. The authors, it's an ancient book to say the least, and I've tried reading this for a while, but as I said, Eastern philosophies aren't a cakewalk. What I mean to say is, reading is one thing and really understanding is another. So maybe not this year, but maybe in future. There is a really nice channel that goes into depths about these Eastern philosophies. It's called Eisenstangler. That channel really explores a lot of Eastern philosophies, the concept of flow, the concept of not fighting, the concept of not trying. A basic takeaway for me, say, is you should want and try to be like a river, meaning you do not have a goal, you do not try, you just flow. But that doesn't mean you lose your character. You have your character of flowing and you just do that, but you do not have any goal in mind. It's just you flow. It's a bit paradoxical, and if you read a lot of Western philosophies, Eastern philosophy might confuse you in a different way, but I think it's a good balance to have to consume Eastern and Western philosophers at the same time, so that you have say well-rounded head. It's a bit of an advanced read even for myself, so I would probably recommend you to explore the summaries first by people who have read this book and their interpretation. I think my camera overheated, so I think I'll make this quick. This video will be, I think, one of the lengthiest video that I've made in a while, but we've got The 4-Hour Workweek, OG book by Tim Ferriss. I think he wrote it way back in 2007. It's not old as 1936 Dale Carnegie book, but this is a really interesting book, A 4-Hour Workweek. Right now I'm at a phase where I am at working 8 hours a week or so to speak. I don't know how long it will be, how long will I be able to sustain that. I really enjoy my schedule these days, and I wanted to learn from the master himself, so I've been reading a couple chapters in this book so far, and a lot of my previous instincts, my gut feeling, is written over here. So this book is what I relate to a lot these days, and I've been reading this actively in the recent days. I'll probably make a summary of this book once I finish this, because this has been really impactful so far, and what I'm going through right now is pretty much summarized by the author here. Then we have The Lean Startup by Eric Ries. I did try to listen to this or read to this, but I could not, but I do want to continue my entrepreneurial journey, hence I need to read a lot of business or books on entrepreneurship. So that's why we have this one over here. And if you've been following me on Instagram or anywhere else, you might know that I am a bit active physically these days, going out on walks, trying to eat healthy, trying to improve my health, trying to lose a lot of weight. In fact, I did lose around 3 to 4 kilograms recently, and I want to go explore more of my body, because as I am growing older, I want to make sure I do take care of my body, because I do not want to spend any time of my life in hospitals. I dread that. It is the reason why I did not pursue medicine as a career, because there's something about hospitals that I do not enjoy. Hence, I need to take care of my body. which is why I bought this dictionary of a book. This is probably the thickest book that I have in my library. This was the last book in my third book haul, and I recently went ahead and did buy a few books. I bought 2 of the books to just give away. This is one of those books. I just wanted to have a few books that I could give away to people, because, well, firstly, it's a nice thing to give books, and secondly, I just hope it helps them. I had the Almanack, but I gave it recently to a friend of mine, my cycling buddy. I hope he reads it. He's going through some difficult time, metaphorically and literally, so I hope it helps. Continuing the thread of entrepreneurship, we have The $100 Startup by Chris Kalebu. Pardon me if I butcher your name. And this book, well, this is like one of those books that highly resonates with me, given my circumstances. So I've been reading this. I finished the first chapter on this one. 4-Hour Work Week and Mindset. Those are the books that I'm reading at the moment. And the last book over here in our list is Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. This is the book that was recommended by Naval Ravikant. It's a fiction, I guess. I've read a few pages over here, and I want to complete this because it's a thin book, and I hope it helps, because I wanted to know what Naval Ravikant... I forgot to mention that this is the book that Naval Ravikant gave out the most to his friends and families, I guess. And that's why I wanted to buy myself one of these and read and figure out why he gave away this book the most to other people. And that summarizes my book haul 2022. I hope you had a fair amount of insights about the books that I bought or the books that I'm reading, and hopefully you can make your own decisions based on this. Thanks for watching.